Hello and welcome to these conversations once again. I have with me renowned writer and journalist Ziya Us Salam, who was once upon a time my colleague also till recently, actually till about 2 years ago. But then we actually wanted to talk when his phenomenal panoramic book on Indian Muslims and the society that we are living in, being a Muslim in Hindu India, came out. We wanted to talk to him about at that point of time, but somehow it didn't happen. But now we have an occasion to start this conversation here because you have
Thank
been
you, but the tables have turned today.
You have
because
been-
for ages I have been an admirer of your political acumen, and I have been seeking your forecasts about any forthcoming elections, and by and large you have been on the ball every time. So it's good to be on the other side today, but great respect for what you have done with your writing, particularly in Uttar Pradesh.
Well, thank you, Sia. But anyway, let me congratulate you for the Association of Muslim Professionals Award, which is of course a very significant award and which is something that you deserve. But then,
Thank you.
Yeah. But then I would like to. I was telling you in the beginning that that we wanted to discuss. We wanted to sit together when your book came out, but that didn't happen. But then, book came out before the 2024 elections, and I think it was a very important intervention in that political context. But now that the 24 elections are over and the BJP has not been able to get a majority, and this idea of the Hindu Rashtra, the RSS, I know for a fact because I have been covering the RSS for so many years, they wanted to proclaim that India had become Hindu Rashtra in 2025, but that is not going to be. So, what is the perspective that you have about the Indian society, the Hindu society, the Muslim society, and the role of the Muslim in a Hindu country?
I don't think it is a Hindu country. There has been major fight. It's a country for each one of us, whatever our religious predilection. And the reason I did this book, which came out...
You call it the Hindu India?
Yeah, that is the title my publishers opted for. And because practically when Modi was having his second innings, in many other things it seemed like a Hindu India, but I kept fighting it, and like you also kept fighting it in your own way, we all do. But the thing was, there were different yardsticks used for Muslims and different yardsticks used for a section of the majority community. I won't say the majority community, but for a section of the majority community, as we saw more recently in Uttar Pradesh with the Kanwar Yatras, where the chief minister asked the shopkeepers and even the fruit vendors to declare their name, because it was just apartheid by another name. This is something which has been going on since 2014, and more so after 2019 when Modi came back to power for a second time around. The Muslims were told here that you can stay here only at the sweet will of the majority community. You cannot aspire for equality or equal rights. The constitution grants you something, but there are ways to circumvent the constitution. This is what the Modi government was doing in its second innings. I'll give you one example. Like Amit Shah went to town that they do not give tickets to Muslim candidates, not because they are Muslims, but because of the winnability factor.
Right.
The point which he was trying to drive home was that Muslim cannot win, which is a fallacy. At one level, the BJP stopped giving tickets to Muslims. Even in the recent elections, they gave only one ticket in Kerala on a seat which they were bound to lose. Otherwise, they stayed away from giving tickets to Muslims. At another level, there was a redrawing of constituencies to particularly marginalize the impact of the Muslim vote. Like in Assam, there were 29 seats earlier where the Muslim vote was crucial. It was reduced to 22 after the delimitation exercise. Then at the third level, first you don't give tickets, second level you don't allow the Muslims to Muslim vote to be impactful in elections, and the third was when Muslims found their names missing in the electoral rolls. Every fourth Muslim had the mortification of finding his name missing from the electoral rolls, even though he might have voted in the past. It's not that he was a kid, 18, 19-year-old kid,
Right.
who was just going to go vote for the first time. People who had been voting for 30, 40 years suddenly found their names missing. So they wanted to invisibilize Muslims at every level. And finally, despite everything, if a Muslim MP was elected on any party's ticket, when he came to the parliament, to the Lok Sabha, for his oath on the Constitution of India, he was greeted with cries of Jai Shri Ram. We had never heard something like that, any religion-specific slogans in the parliament in the past. The idea was very clear. We won't allow a Muslim to vote in elections. We won't put up any Muslim candidates. And if per chance, despite everything, a Muslim candidate makes it to Lok Sabha, we'll make sure to browbeat him, to intimidate him, and to assert the majoritarian Sangha.
Well, Ziya, these are points which you make very forcibly in the book itself. And I find something very interesting, a very important nuance that you have highlighted in the book, where you say that that the two big mainstream parties in this country, while the BJP is overtly Hindutva and aggressively Hindutva, the Congress has also not done justice to the minority community, especially the Muslim minority community. And you said that at one point of time, even somebody like Rahul Gandhi had stopped mentioning the Muslim word in his election campaign.
Yeah.
So, do you think it is changing after the 2024 elections, where the BJP has suffered significant reverses in a place like Uttar Pradesh, where again, as you very rightly pointed out, they were trying to get a consolidation of Hindu votes. They wanted to create a pan-Hindu political identity, which did not happen because of the caste factors within the Hindu community. So you think that that narrative is changing, at least for the principal opposition party of this country?
I guess the opposition has found its voice after the elections this year. Earlier, the opposition was kind of browbeaten, intimidated, and virtually marginalized even within the parliament. They had no voice. Now they have the numbers, and numbers give you strength.
But are they actually?
And for the first time, you would have seen on the Waqf Amendment bill, you found Rahul Gandhi using the word Muslim, which he didn't do throughout his Bharat Jodo Yatra. When he started the Bharat Jodo Yatra, first at no place did he use the word Muslim. At no place was he seen with the stereotypical Muslim with a beard and a skull cap or something like that. At only one place was he photographed with two little girls who were in a burqa or hijab, so to say. They were just 12, 13-year-old kids who were with him. Others, he made sure that he stayed away from every madrasa, every mosque.
He also started going to temples.
And he was all the time temple hopping and all that.
Yeah.
But fortunately,
not only temple hopping, with all the paraphernalia.
Fortunately, the voters have sent a very strong message, not just to the BJP but also to the Congress, that the idea of India is paramount, no matter what you do. And Congress has been as guilty of stigmatizing Muslims as the BJP. It's all very fine to say that Congress is secular. Congress is conveniently secular. If you go back to our freedom struggle, there were so many Congress leaders who were spending time between Hindu Mahasabha and the Congress, and they were Congress presidents also. What does it say about the party, even in the run-up to the independence? And then after independence, we know what happened with the Goraksha kind of movement in the mid-60s. And we know what happened during 1975 with vasectomy operations of Sanjay Gandhi and that kind of stuff. And we know who was the Prime Minister when the Lok Sabha were opened. Yeah. And we also know who was the Prime Minister when the Supreme Court judgment of Muslim women's maintenance was overturned. Congress has been guilty of playing to the gallery of Muslim clerics without really bothering too much about Muslims' emancipation. Hopefully, this time when Rahul Gandhi and other opposition leaders spoke up in Parliament, and very staunchly so, using the word Muslim more than once, and talking of Waqf bill as it should have been done, hopefully we'll be able to turn the corner.
And even as you say that the kind of unity that the opposition parties have shown on the Waqf bill, and also we all know for a fact that that even though the allies of the BJP like Telugu Desam and Janata Dal United, for the record they supported the Waqf bill, but then privately they opposed it, and that is why the bill has been now been sent to.
If they had been voting on that bill on that day, the government would have fallen. It was a very smart move to send the bill to the parliamentary committee, because under no circumstances would Telugu Desam have supported this bill.
Right.
At the very least, they would have walked out.
Yeah.
Same for Janata Dal. Modi in his third innings is a pale imitation of Modi in the second innings. He's still trying to cater to his core vote bank of a great section of majority community, but not a largest section of the majority community, trying to tell them that I am the same Modi. The reality is he's not. And we got another example today when the UPSC was asked to withdraw electoral entry advertisement.
Right.
Modi in the past would not have thought of something like that.
That comes
Today, what they used to say about Manmohan Singh is true of Narendra Modi. Not only is he controlled by Nagpur, he is also a weak prime minister, depending on his allies for continuation in office.
But even though that this is all true, especially there have been a number of significant developments, including from the Supreme Court on this Kavadia name board display and all that. But on a very crucial matter, like the lynching of Muslims, the serial lynching of Muslims, the serial attacks against Muslims across the country, even places like Medak in South India.
Telangana.
It's happening. So, and on this question, I think the opposition parties, including the leader of opposition, is not vocal enough.
See, the opposition has to get its act together. If you go back in time to September 28, 2015, when Muhammad Akhlaq was lynched in Dadri in Western UP, we had Samajwadi Party leaders approaching the bereaved family. We had Congress leaders approaching them. We had the Communist leaders approaching them. And Akhilesh called over the family of the bereaved to Lucknow and announced a relief package and so on. And of course, nobody went from the central government even as a token gesture of sympathy and whatever. But after that, the opposition just lost its voice. When Pehlu Khan incident took place, when Ragbar incident took place, Imtiaz and Qasim and others, we didn't hear any noises from the opposition outside the parliament or even within the parliament. Even when the Supreme Court asked the central government to frame a law on lynching, there was not vocal support from the opposition in any major way, barring feeble noises and the odd strong voice of OIC. And the opposition is on the subject of lynching continuing to be diabolically quiet. I think they are still equating lynching with cow slaughter in their mind. And that perception has to change, because the reality of lynching has nothing to do with cow slaughter. Back in 2015, when Akhlaq was lynched, yes, there was this allegation made against him that he had slaughtered a calf without any evidence provided to this day. And later on, when Ragbar was lynched or Pehlu Khan was lynched, similar allegations were made. But by the time of 2019 elections, the fig leaf of allegation of cow slaughter was done away with when Tabriz Ansari was lynched.
Right.
And then it became a usual thing to ask a Muslim, a vendor, a mechanic, or somewhere, a poor Muslim usually, to either just say Jai Shri Ram and then pounce upon him. In some cases, people were asked to say the Kalma or say Allahu Akbar. If they said that, then it was a sure sign that they were Muslims, and then they pounced upon. And even as the mob hit the victim with rods, with sticks, and whatever they could lay their hands on, the victim was asked to say Jai Shri Ram. And in the final defense, even when the victim did say Jai Shri Ram, it did not suffice to save his life. Unfortunately, our opposition leaders were found wanting at that time. And not much has changed even now.
Yeah.
You talked of Telangana.
Yeah.
But we had a similar incident in Chhattisgarh before Telangana, after June 4 election results. Yeah. And we had a similar thing in Himachal Pradesh. We had another thing in Uttarakhand. We had a similar thing in Saharanpur. And the bulldozer continues to visit the Muslim premises with impunity. The latest one has come from Udaipur in Rajasthan. Before that, we had Akbarpur in Lucknow, and we had the same bulldozer visit in Madhya Pradesh.
Even in Faizabad, after this election victory of the Samajwadi Party, but even there, I mean, of course, the Samajwadi Party leader is alleged to have raped a person, a young girl. But the point is now.
See, the point is, even in Rajasthan, something wrong is done, but okay, he's a kid, 10th standard boy, so he's not an adult as such. There are different yardsticks used for Muslims and non-Muslims by the opposition also, and unfortunately, it seems by the judiciary as well. Why doesn't the Supreme Court take suo notice of these bulldozer actions? When these bulldozers visit the house of an auto rickshaw owner, or when these bulldozers visit the house of a man who doesn't have both his hands in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh, and his house and his shop is demolished, saying you were involved in stone pelting at a Hindu religious procession. The man cannot pick up a cup to drink tea or a glass to drink water, and he was accused of being a stone pelter. And the court doesn't step in. Until people go to the court and petition and there are hearings and repeat hearings, only then do we get some relief. The Supreme Court was prompt as it should have been in the case of Kolkata rape case, but unfortunately it doesn't show the same alertness, same promptness when it comes to lynching cases.
Yeah, so basically, I was about to ask you about whether you would want to kind of do a sequel to the book, because it is a book that kind of had a very definitive impact in the 2024 elections, in the context of the elections. In the new context, don't you think that certain things have to be reiterated, certain things have to be kind of nuanced and stated in a different manner?
See, even doing this book, I wish I didn't have to do this book, honestly speaking. I did this book because I found nobody was speaking up for a Muslim today, neither in the media nor in political circles. And as I write at the beginning of my book, to be a Muslim is to be an orphan. And that was a feeling with which I wrote this book, and it was emotionally very draining and debilitating exercise, but it is something which I had to do so that I could tell the next generation that when all this was happening in our country, there were people who were fighting it out. There were people who were raising their voice, even if there were just a handful of them. And I would give a lot of credit to my publisher, HarperCollins, for daring to publish a book of this nature at such a time. And yes, there have been calls that there should be a sequel to this, but as of today, I don't think I'm in a mental state to pick it up. But down the line, yes, it deserves an analytical understanding of how things have changed after June 4th verdict in 2024, and how, unfortunately, a few things remain the same.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the book is very comprehensive. It kind of takes a historic look at the whole issue, how the Muslims have been treated in this country, and how Muslim regimes in this country have functioned. So it's a very comprehensive and panoramic exercise. But then you have looked at a lot of contemporary issues before that in smaller books. Like, for example, you have addressed the CAA issue in a particular book. You have
Shaheen
Bagh, and you have also looked at the role of the women in the mosque, and also you looked at the kind of trajectory of Indian madrasa. So basically,
I went to Supreme Court asking for permission for Muslim women to go to masjid, because it is something which is allowed by the Quran. There is not one verse of the Quran which prevents women from going to masjid. And if you go to Makkah and Medina, if anybody goes for Umrah or Hajj pilgrimage, he goes with his mother or wife or daughter, and everybody prays together. But when they come back to India, it seems there's a different Islam, and it's completely patriarchal, where women are virtually driven out of mosques. I know many people will object to that statement. The fact of the matter is, when there are no provisions for Muslim women in a masjid, when they are not made to feel welcome, when there is no place for ablution over there, no toilet for them, and every woman is supposed to cover her head during prayer. So even the basic stole or dupatta is not there in a masjid. How does a woman feel welcome? That was my idea when I went to court, and fortunately, All India Muslim Personal Law Board also agreed that yes, a Muslim woman has a right to go and offer prayers in the masjid as and when she wants.
I remember.
Hopefully, that is one battle we have won.
Well, I remember your copy when we were together in Frontline when the Muslim woman led an azan in Kerala.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. So
Yeah.
why don't we? Why are we not seeing more expressions of that kind?
See, the reason is indoctrination over hundreds of years. Like in any other community, there is this feeling among Muslim communities, okay, this is something which we can do, this is something which only a man is supposed to do. And that indoctrination will take quite a lot of time to be erased from the psyche of people. Like when my babies were born, normally it's the father of the child who gives azan in the ear of the baby, or or the grandfather. In my case, I asked my mother to give the azan. Because I said, you are the oldest person in my family, the most respected person, so let's go ahead with doing something like that. And I also took her to offer prayers at New Delhi Jama Masjid for Eid. And she was 76 at that time. And that was the first time she went to offer Eid prayers in Masjid. So you can understand the kind of challenge we have, but one day at a time.
Okay. Would you? Some people would call it Islamic feminism. Would you agree with that kind of a?
Let them say what they want. People have their own definition of feminism. My idea is Allah stands for justice. He does not tolerate any injustice. The Quran very clearly says, give the right kind of pledge or the right kind of assessment of any situation, even if your words go against you or against your family. There is not one single verse in the Quran which prevents women from going to mosque. There is not one verse in the Quran which talks of nikah halala the way it takes place in our country more often than not.
Right.
What happens is nikah halala draws from instant triple talaq. The Quran doesn't talk of instant triple talaq or talaq at one go. There's a procedure outlined in Surah Baqarah of the Quran with verses 226 to 242 and the opening verses of Surah Talaq besides a few verses elsewhere. And nowhere does the Quran permit instant triple talaq. It always has to be over a period of at least 3 months. It could be much longer than that also, because there is option given for reconciliation, for rethinking and that kind of stuff. But the Maulanas in our country, a large number of them, were in favor of instant triple talaq. And it's such a shame. What should have occurred to an average Muslim who would have read the Quran or understood its meaning? They needed the Supreme Court of India to step in for women's rights. They should have sorted out the issue themselves. Something similar is going to take place with khula and with nikah halala. Now, what happens in nikah halala is if a woman has been divorced, say at one go, a man says talaq, 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 and then a few days later, the woman wants to go back to her husband, and the husband also realizes his mistake. They both want to go back to each other, resume their family life, and suddenly these Maulanas step in. No, you can't go back to your husband. Now you have become haram, prohibited for him, because he has exhausted all the 3 options of divorce at one go. So the only option for you is to marry another man, obtain divorce, and then marry your erstwhile husband. And obviously, such a marriage is a sham. Islam talks of integrity when you enter into a wedlock. There should be integrity on both the partners' side, that we are going to try to make it work and we'll respect each other and blah blah, all those things. But in this kind of thing, it is not possible to get a husband like that who will suddenly divorce you, and as it is, it's a sham marriage. Then the Maulana himself offers his candidature. That okay, I'll marry you in the evening and release you from my nikah next morning, give you talaq next morning. And that is what they call nikah halala. That kind of nikah halala is nikah haram. That is why I did a book called nikah halala.
Yeah, you know, and what is the clergy's reaction to you? Because on the one side,
Well, they're not my best friends.
no, that's what. On the one side, you are somebody who's kind of very resolutely stood for for championing the rights of the Muslims and their right to life, their right to food and all that. But on the other side, you are also being seen as an Islamic feminist. So what is how is the clergy looking at you?
They don't really like me too much. There's a mosque right in front of my office on Bahadur Shah Zafar. I often go there for prayers. One day, a Muslim colleague from our office, she called me on Friday and she wanted to offer her Friday prayers. I said, you go to this mosque. She said, I can't because there's no space for women. Then I fought for space for women over there. Fortunately, we ended up with having a room for them. And something similar happened at the Jamiat Mosque. Jamiat, unfortunately, had never thought it proper or wise to have space for women in the mosque. I said there are so many women who come to the passport office and they are professionals also working in the vicinity. Do you expect them to go home every time there's prayer time? As the man can just walk in and offer his namaz. Finally they saw reason they made some space.
So that's also
it's a long haul.
Small victory, it's a long haul. Well, talking of long hauls, Ziya, I have followed you as a journalist for several decades, and of course we have been colleagues for a few years also in Frontline. But then when I first saw you as a journalist, you were not this social observer, you were not this overt political observer. You were essentially a culture journalist and a cinema journalist, and of course a very, very good one at that. So I remember your first book on the 4 shows in Delhi.
That was the second book.
The second book, okay. The
first one was Houseful, the golden age of Hindi cinema.
Right.
It was about the movies of 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Then I did Delhi 4 shows.
Yeah.
And actually Delhi 4 shows still remains a book close to my heart. You know why? Because nobody has studied cinema. People studied cinema in the sense of movies and subjects and heroes and directors, music directors, but nobody has actually studied cinema halls. Without which no movie would have reached the masses.
Even when I first saw the book, I thought it was a very unique,
So that book remains close to my heart. But yeah, as you rightly say, there was a change which came about me, and I think I have to, as one of my former colleagues Venkitesh used to say, I have to thank Narendra Modi for it.
Well, we have a lot to talk, Ziya, but basically we have had a look at your recent book, the way you have intervened in Indian society, and the way you have championed the rights of the average Muslim human being. And of course, we have briefly looked at your forays as a culture journalist and a cinema journalist. I'm sure that that we'll have to continue this conversation on different occasions.
It's good to talk to you, always good to talk to you. In front of camera, behind the camera.
Okay. Thank you, Ziya. Thank you very much. Yeah.